Hi everyone, welcome back. Hope you had a good week. I'm curious how this week went for all of you, trying to lower your carb intake. Perhaps it was easier than you thought, maybe it was harder than you thought. Let's review what your goals were for this last week. So your first goal or task was to first just moderate your intake, right? Make sure that you were using the plate method to keep your carbohydrates to less than 25% of your meals. And to choose the healthiest carbs possible. So essentially trying to get rid of all refined carbohydrates and continuing to limit or avoid sugars from the week before that. Your second goal was to use one of the tracking tools to figure out how many carbohydrates do you normally get. You know, what is kind of an average amount for you per day? And then to come up with a plan to bring your total down. So you had 3 different goals depending on where you were starting as far as carbohydrate intake. So the first goal was to drop it below 200 grams per day. If you were already close to that, then the second goal was to drop it below 150 grams per day. And then the third goal, if you were already around there, was to drop it below 100 grams. And remember, we had talked about the connection with fat burning, and essentially the more weight you need to lose, the lower you want to drop your carbs. So that was the crux of it, right? Was to come up with a goal amount and then to come up with a plan, some sample meal ideas of how you were going to keep your carbs to that level. And then, of course, record how you did. So I hope it went well for you. I hope you were successful most of the days, and hopefully it wasn't as hard as you thought it would be. I'm going to give you another week to work on this because this is a really important piece to the puzzle when we're actively trying to lose weight. So we're going to take a break from food this next week, as you can see from the slide, and it's going to give you another week just to work on limiting or avoiding sugars, processed foods, and really working on refining how many carbohydrates you're getting in a day. And I would suggest that, let's say, if your first goal was to get under 200 and you did that pretty successfully, then perhaps this next week make it your goal to drop below 150. And if you were already doing 150, then make it your goal this week to drop below 100. So you're going to see if you can go even lower this week and what that feels like and how your body responds, okay? So that is just going to kind of stay. We're going to continue with those food goals. And this week, we're going to focus on stress and how do we manage probably the biggest challenge and the greatest saboteur to our weight loss efforts. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on our stress week. Your first task for this week is to read your chapter and to do a little homework this weekend to really think through and identify what are the stressors in your life right now. Most of them will probably be pretty obvious, but not always. So it may take a little bit of meditation or journaling or some time to really kind of think through what are the culprits of stress in your life. Once you have a list of your stressors, then what I'd like you to do is to divide them into 2 different columns. So one column is going to be the stressors that are changeable, while the other column is going to be the stressors that are outside of your control and maybe aren't changeable right now. Perhaps down the road, but not currently, okay? So let's just review that. So your first task is to identify your sources of stress. And then the second task is to divide them into changeable versus outside your control. Once you have your list of stressors and you've divided them into the 2 columns, then we're going to go ahead and get to the heart of this week, which is really about how do we manage the stressors that are in our life. And the short term, the immediate goal is to come up with tools and strategies that are really going to help you manage it better, right? To help you de-stress, to help you sort of cope with whatever stressors you have, that particularly the ones that are outside of your control. So what I want you to do is to come up with a list of all the possible tools, strategies, ideas that resonate with you, that make you feel good, that make you feel relaxed, that make you happy, and really get like a good list to choose from, okay? I have lots of ideas in the book, so of course you can try any of those, but feel free to come up with your own list too. And then what I want you to do is out of that list, I want you to pick at least one thing. You can certainly do more, but at least one thing that you commit to including into your routine this week. And the goal here is to really try to cultivate more strategies, more tools that help you manage the stress so we don't quickly go towards food as our comfort, which ultimately is a comfort for most of us. So in order to switch that behavior, we have to have other tools that can step in instead of the food. And also just help bring down those stress hormones, right? And those inflammatory cascades that happen when we're stressed out. All of those things that prevent us from losing weight. So I gave a list of just some of my tools, some of the things that resonate with me, just as an example. I have them listed there. But I really want you to come up with your own list and a plan of how you're going to apply at least one or more tools into your week this week, okay? The last task, and this doesn't necessarily need to happen right now, this might happen, let's say, towards the end of this week, is to really come up with a long-term plan of not only cultivating tools and strategies in your life, particularly things that you can do on a daily basis that are going to help you relax and unwind, but also, how can you change stressors in your life? You know, that was the whole point of dividing them into two different columns, was to come up with which are the ones that can be immediately or more quickly changed, and really come up with a strategy to do that. So I'm going to encourage you to kind of keep that in the back of your mind as the long-term goal that we're going to go towards is how do we reduce the stress in our life, right? We may not be able to eliminate it completely, but the long-term plan is to reduce as much as we can, and the short-term plan is to come up with strategies that help us cope. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to everyone, and you might already be doing some of those things, but we're just going to make it more of a concrete strategy for you this week. Your final task then, of course, is to map out your plan on your worksheet. So you have it written out, thought out, you have a strategy for the week, and then, of course, record how you do. What is your stress like each day, and what tools do you implement? And I might even add in the notes section just some thoughts about, do they work? The tools or the strategies that you're thinking of implementing this week, you want a little bit of feedback. Was that a good tool? Was that helpful, or did it not really take the edge off as much as you had hoped? And that kind of feedback will help you massage your toolbox going forward, okay? Because obviously, this is just the beginning of a very long-term strategy in helping you cope with stress. So let's go ahead and just kind of review then what our tasks are for this week. Okay, so task 1, identify your stressors. Come up with a long list, include everything you can think of that creates stress in your life, okay? Step 2 is to label those stressors. Are they changeable? Are they outside of your control? Are they maybe changeable down the road, but not right now, right? So you want to qualify what are these stressors in your life. That'll help you start to see if there's some long-term strategies of dealing with some of those stressors and maybe even getting them out of your life, which of course would be ideal if possible. Your third task, and again, the heart of the program, is to come up with your toolbox. What are your stress management strategies? How do you help, what tools can you use to help yourself unwind, to help yourself relax, to even in the moment, to help yourself switch from that anxious, racing heart, sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state. I know that for me, if I can feel myself getting worked up, I may have to just take a moment, take 3 deep breaths and switch my nervous system, right? Before I can move forward, because you really do get into a space that's hard to think clearly from, or even sometimes see an obvious way out, right? So you want to have tools that maybe at the end of the day help you unwind, but also what are some tools you can use in the moment when you just had, let's say, a stressful encounter with someone or something. What can you do in the moment to switch your nervous system, okay? So you're coming up with a toolbox. You're going to commit to at least one tool, if not more than that, to implement throughout this week. You're going to map out a plan on your worksheet of what tools you're going to try this week, how are you going to fit it into your day or your week, or just really think through when are you going to implement these tools so that they actually are an appointment, right? Are part of your week and not something that you might get to if you have time. And then of course track how you do, okay? And write out thoughts, ideas, feedback, etc., to help you going forward and implementing some of these strategies. Just as a reminder from what I said in the beginning of the video, you're going to continue with the sugar, processed food, and carbohydrate goals. So it gives you another week to just really work on massaging how you're managing your carbohydrates and trying to take your goal to the next step, right? So bringing your carbohydrate level a bit lower. If you're at the 200, go for 150. If you're at the 150, go for a 100. Remember that the more weight you have to lose, the lower ideally you'd want your carbs to be. And that means definitely below 100 grams. So if you have quite a bit of weight to lose, I want that to be your long-term goal, that you're shooting for a plan that you can realistically follow for a while that keeps your carbs below 100 grams. It doesn't mean you have to stay there forever, okay? This is simply a strategy to help get the weight off faster. Once you get to your healthy weight or to your weight goal, you can ease up on this a bit to maintain your weight. But just knowing that the more restrictive you can be with carbs, the faster you'll see progress, okay? And as I mentioned in the recording last week, just a reminder that really besides dropping carbohydrate intake, there's really the only other way to switch your body into fat burning is with fasting. And that is something that we're going to talk about in the coming weeks as another really, I think, helpful strategy. But for now, it's going to be about the carbohydrates and lowering those to get your fat burning up, okay? As far as the other principles and goals that we've been working on, hopefully some of those are actually starting to become new habits for you and are starting to feel more normal and part of your routine and not something that you're still tracking. So, those would be your hydration and your veggies and your proteins and your fats, and trying to get movement into your day. So hopefully some of those, if not all of them, are starting to feel just more a part of you by this point. Just, I know I say it every week, but a reminder to check your weight once this week, record it on your weight tracking sheet, and to please get on that Facebook group. There's still not many of you sharing on the Facebook group, and I know it's super helpful to hear from each other. Whether it's something you're struggling with or a recipe idea or even a success, like something that worked really well for you, can often be super inspiring and motivating to one of your team members, right? So please try to get on there at least one time this week and share something with everyone. There are a few of you who still haven't filled out the mid-program evaluation, so please take the time to do that this weekend. Make that on your to-do list so that you can check it off and you don't have to think about it again, and then I make sure I have all the information I need to help you guys be successful with the second half of this program. One last reminder, I sent an email out this week to everyone that not only linked to that evaluation if you hadn't completed it yet, but also linked to our first 6 videos. So the first half of the program so that you could have all the videos just accessible in one email. So please save that, put that in a folder somewhere so you can access it if you need to at any future date if you want to go back and look at any of these recordings. And that's it. So I wish you a wonderful week, hopefully with very low stress. And if it's not low stress, at least hopefully strategies that work, that help you relax and not react to the stress as much as you might otherwise. Until next time, take care.